So hi guys, I'm ZeroAuth, and I'm here to talk to you guys today about designing robust, decentralized collateral. So just a quick overview. We're going to do a quick little slide on what is collateral, defined for the talk. It can have quite a wide definition. We're going to talk about where do we use collateral in DeFi, sort of like why am I talking about this, why is this important? Then we're going to talk about what makes good collateral. We're going to talk about a few frameworks that we already use for collateral in the space. And then we're going to talk about how to design these systems and improve them. So first, really quickly, I want to define collateral because, in the broad sense, collateral can be anything from a BMW to a Bored Ape, just kind of anything with value that a lender can secure in order to protect themselves from a delinquent loan, right? So you want a loan, your house is collateral. Very simple sort of real-world application of that. But for this talk, I'm just going to talk about fungible tokens that are on-chain. And the reason for that is just to help curb the scope for this talk, sort of what I want to focus on here. So let's talk about some DeFi use cases for collateral. So one of the big ones is derivatives. So derivatives are sort of in the process of coming to DeFi. We've had some pretty great protocols, Perpetual Protocol, GMX, and collateral is basically used as settlement. So when people have, long, shorts, futures, if you're doing options, you want to settle into a single unit, and you want some sort of robust collateral to be able to settle into. Another really common use of collateral is, of course, lending. Sunny mentioned Mars a little earlier today. So a lot of lending and borrowing protocols, the borrower posts collateral for the lender to accept. So let's just really quickly go over some good principles. So low volatility. The reason why low volatility collateral is good is because it makes you more comfortable to hold it for a long time. If any of you guys have tried like an NFT lending site, there's some new ones coming out. It can be really scary, if your floor price drops by half, drops by a third, or in the current market conditions, Bitcoin dropping by reasonable amounts. If you're not careful, you could get liquidated and your position is gone, right? So it's important that when you're using collateral that you want it to be low volatility. You also want it to be low trust. So what I mean by this, we'll get into this a little bit later, but sort of a jab at centralized stablecoins, which are a common use of collateral, especially on like Perpetual Protocol and other sort of derivatives platforms. This can be a huge problem, not only for the sort of people who believe in the DeFi principles here, but also just in terms of trust. Like you have to trust the issuer there, that there's a lot of sort of trust issues, which in a trustless environment is not something we want. Then high scalability. Ideally, you'd like to be able to increase or decrease the amount of collateral present for like settling on the derivatives protocol as possible. And then ease of mint. So we'll talk about sort of minting and burning later on, but for something like a USDC, only Circle controls what's being minted, what's being burned, and then the market has to sort of control where these tokens flow, which is fine, but it's even better when sort of the market can control, we'll get into things like DAI, where the market can control how to sort of print more supply, get supply off the market. So those are sort of some good collateral principles. Let's get into the frameworks. So really there's 4 frameworks I laid out here. There's centralized stablecoins. There's what I'm calling CDP stablecoins. There are volatile assets, and there are dampened assets. So let's start with centralized stables. I don't love these. I assume many of you don't love these. Some people have called them a necessary evil. And basically their huge pro is that they've been able to absorb a lot of pressure, right? And they've been pretty reliable thus far. They got some pretty big downsides though. We see sort of issuer problems, people doubting Tether. It's completely opaque. We don't really know what's holding up these systems. And we don't like that. That's not very trustless, and it doesn't encourage composability. And so we started to see some on-chain sort of stable coins that came up trying to fix this. I think Dai, you could say, was among the first. And I've put MIM here as well from Abracadabra. Basically, the CDP system is where you take your Bitcoin, Ethereum, or USDC, and you essentially place it in a vault, and you can mint these stablecoins. And the stablecoins are directly backed by the value in that vault. This helps sort of create a reasonable stablecoin system. However, their big weakness is sort of cascading. If any of you were around for Black Thursday, back with Ty, or maybe around 3 weeks ago on Terra, you're maybe familiar with how quickly sort of stable coins can break peg and how strong that is, and that's usually due to the reflexivity of the system. In the case of CDP systems, if you get liquidated, your collateral has to be sold, which further lowers that price, right? So like you have your Bitcoin that you use to mint your DAI, Bitcoin goes down, you have to sell your Bitcoin, that lowers Bitcoin further, and it becomes a cycle. The third is volatile assets. I bring this up because of mainly GMX. Don't know how many of you are familiar. It's a derivatives protocol on Avalanche and Arbitrum. It's enjoyed quite some success during the bear market, and notably it uses volatile assets. It uses a sort of a mixture called GLP, but it's comprised of Bitcoin, Ethereum, AVAX. So you can use a volatile asset sort of as collateral. I'd say the main issue there is obviously the volatility. If we go back to the good collateral principles, it doesn't exactly inspire sort of long-term holding, Well, I should rephrase that. Maybe people, we all enjoy holding our cryptocurrency. But it doesn't encourage you to sort of hold that in a collateral system long-term. You're going to be afraid of loss, right? And then finally, I want to talk about dampened assets, which are, in my opinion, the most interesting. And the main one here is RAI. And basically, they have a similar mechanism to CDP, where you put your collateral in a vault and you mint a token. But the difference is that they drop the idea of a stablecoin peg, and they basically say, we can be volatile, we can go up, we can go down, and we're just going to do that as slowly as humanly possible. So I don't have a chart up here, but RAI, which is this stablecoin, has been out for well over a year now, I believe, and it hasn't gone off from its redemption value by more than 6%. And I think, especially in crypto, you could say that that's a really good number. 6% deviation at most, that inspires long-term holding, and so you can actually get some of the benefits for collateral without strictly being a stable coin. And the reason you want that is when there's no peg, it's actually a lot more elastic. I'd say sort of like, you could call the CDP systems a bit like glass. They can be very rigid and strong, but if you break it, it kind of shatters. RAI is a bit more like rubber. It can be pushed down, pushed up. It has some flex to it, but when you let go and keep the market forces normal, it'll always return to its base shape. And so these collateral frameworks have kind of been at a standstill. RAI's main weakness is that it only uses Ethereum, which is really impressive, but there are a lot of more interesting things to do with Ethereum. So you don't end up getting a lot of RAI minted. People would rather use ICETH or use Ethereum for leverage, margin, all sorts of other stuff. And so you don't get a lot of use cases there. So these systems have kind of been at a standstill. They've been competing. And so we kind of wanted to find a way forward, myself and my colleagues. And so it's my pleasure to introduce Membrane to you guys. So the idea of Membrane is specifically to target collateral for use in the derivative stack, perpetuals, futures, options, etc. And also for sort of pseudo lending. So that's user to contract lending, think MakerDAO or Abracadabra, I suppose. So the system we're using is going to be asset dampening. So similar to sort of RAI, Reflexor. So you won't have a stable coin being minted, but you will have a very low volatility asset being minted, which is exactly what you want for collateral. You will be able to use Osmosis LPs to mint this, right? So you'll essentially take your Osmosis LPs from spot, and you'll use them to mint your collateral tokens. And then those collateral tokens can be used to provide liquidity for a perpetuals protocol. And in this way, as long as you're careful with your price fluctuation, you could be providing liquidity on spot and providing liquidity on the perpetuals market at the same time with the same collateral. So it's a very flexible system. For us, we've also added a few improvements. So we're excited about multi-asset CDPs, which is basically where instead of just depositing your Ethereum and minting, or depositing your USDC or whatever and minting, you can bundle your assets together and mint sort of tokens against that whole set of collateral. And what that does is it keeps your, it increases the robustness for you. So let's say your portfolio is 50% USDC, 50% ETH. If ETH drops by half, your portfolio is only dropped by a quarter, right? So by bundling them together in one bundle, you'll be able to decrease the odds of yourself getting liquidated by a large amount. And you can almost think about this as sort of minting against your entire portfolio. If you took it to the extreme, you could throw your whole portfolio in there and mint a lot, sort of like in the TradFi world, to make a sort of analog, like an equity line of credit. You can sort of use this to extend credit against the principal value that you have. And the reason we're targeting LPs is that they're a pretty sort of dead asset. And what I mean by that is once you have an LP, there's not much you do with it. It sort of sits there, right? But it has, in a lot of cases, a large principal value. So this allows you to be a lot more sort of flexible with how you can borrow against the principal value of your LPs, which we think is pretty powerful. And the last thing is that we've really generalized our contract system to enable new token types. So we're investigating NFTs, we're investigating sort of vault tokens, and we're looking into bringing sort of more possibilities to this system. So yeah, thank you guys for listening.